Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Redefined Stories. I'm so excited for our discussion today, which is centered mostly around like gender identity, your sexual orientation, talks about body image, societal norms, etc. Our guest today is Viplav Subramanian, who is an international student here at UBC with a major in gender, race, and sexuality studies. He is amazing. He's the guy, if you know what I mean. Aside from his leadership involvements on campus as the RA, he's also an advocate for social justice for people of color, queer community, feminism, and even fat phobia. And to emphasize, he's not just a regular RA. During his time as RA, he raised awareness about issues relating to minimum wage workers through house meetings, and he also consulted campaigns on sexual and mental health, sexual and mental health well-being. And most importantly, he is a member of the LGBTQIA plus community. And for those who don't know, LGBTQ is an abbreviation for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer or questioning individuals. So now, Viplav, it's amazing to have you here. It's an honor. Uh, let's just start off by knowing more about like how did you find out that you were a part of the LGBTQIA plus community? Did you always know, or how did you kind of find out?
Yeah, I think I think for me, I would say I kind of was aware of the fact that I was not necessarily straight at the age of 10 or 12, which I would say a lot of people think is a young age. I don't necessarily think that's a young age. It's just when you start presetting into this period of adolescence and you start realizing that you can have a certain kind of emotion, a certain kind of feeling towards another individual, which is not necessarily platonic in nature. And that's when I think I kind of realized. I would say though that um, so it's very debatable to say that people who are part of the LGBTQIA2S plus community are born that way or not born that way, because both these narratives have been weaponized against our community, where born that way can be used as a way of saying, hey, let's promote eugenics and then wipe this whole population out, because there's a biological link to why they're like this. And not born this way basically is also a way of promoting these corrective strategies of conversion therapy and a lot. So I would say I don't tend to like to take a stance on whether like I knew I can say I knew from a certain age, but I wouldn't say that it's innate to who I am, or it's not, because I think as someone who also has taken a few psychology courses, I know that a lot of behavior is generally modeled through socioeconomic and socio-contextual factors, which is your nurture as well as your nature, which is your biological factors. So I would say it's a combination of both. You can be socially conditioned to find a particular sex attractive, and that might be non-normative to heterosexual relations too. So yeah, so I would say I have known for a while. But like I said, my stance on whether like I was like born into this, or whether like it was socially conditioned, is still very blurry, because I don't particularly see taking one stance as helpful towards the community. And like, so I would say, yeah, it's a factor of both things. I definitely think that a lot of social conditioning does go into why some people would identify as also being LGBTQIA2S plus. So yeah.
Perfect, amazing. Yeah. But I'm also kind of wondering is like, since you kind of realize this at the age of like 10, which according to me is young for like a person to realize, because I think when I was 10, like, I was aware about a lot of like even terminologies, or aware that there are, how like society always tells you, oh, there are just two genders, there are just two type of people you can like. I think I was never aware of those or even educated, because in schools you were never thought about it. Or let's say even our parents were not that comfortable talking about,
Yeah.
such topics. So I'm kind of wondering, like, how did you deal with it at that age? Because I feel like I don't know how your family situation was at that moment, but like, did your parents were also on board with it completely? Did you share it with them?
So
How was
I
that?
don't think when I say I kind of knew, I mean that I was completely conscious and aware of it.
Okay.
It's this feeling in the back of your mind that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Um, I think a lot of people have that. Like a lot of LGBTQIA2S plus community members, they too tend to like have this back of your mind inkling feeling
Yeah.
kind of thing. And a lot of it also comes from this social conditioning of like, always was interested in more apparently socially considered feminine behaviors and socially considered feminine agendas of like, dressing up and like playing with Barbies and stuff like that. And I would say a lot of that would always make me feel like I didn't belong to the apparent male identifying groups. And that in itself is this unique sense of, out of placeness, and that out of placeness converts into this inverted sense of questioning yourself.
Yeah.
And you start questioning whether you belong and whether you have this idea of like adhering to what this prescribed male sexuality and male sexual behavior is supposed to be about. Because I think, like, at least from what I understand about my own life, I was always aware of the fact that I am male. And I still identify as a male, but I think like when you do, and then when your behavior doesn't match that, there's this idea of an incongruence, and that incongruence probably led me to questioning my sexuality.
Yeah.
But that questioning as such did not probably happen till 14, 15.
Okay.
I definitely knew in the back of my mind at 10, 12 that
Yeah.
I like guys, but I don't think I questioned that. And I don't think I was completely aware of the fact that, like, that is in itself an alternative sexuality, like you said, because of the lack of education.
Yeah.
And I think commenting on the lack of education, I think that also kind of blurred my understanding of my identity, because in India, I think we use the umbrella term of being trans to state anyone who's LGBTQIA2S plus, which is extremely incorrect because that's not true. And that's where I think I also was very confused on why, because I don't identify as trans. And so I knew I wasn't trans, but I also knew that I wasn't straight.
Yeah.
So I think it took a lot of time to be able to understand what being gay itself also means.
Yeah.
And so I would say that came at the age of 14, 15, or 16.
Okay. And for you, would you say there was this one time and place or like date when you actually like came out? Or was
Mm.
it like a process over a period of time?
Coming out is a process. It's a struggle that every LGBTQIA2S plus member has to face every day.
Yeah.
In every part of their life. As soon as you take a new job, as soon as you enter a new workforce, as soon as you get involved in new circles, it's a process that you have to keep doing. A lot of people are pushing back against the idea of coming out and considering it as a letting you in instead. So it's a new term that a lot of people are using. And I think, yeah, I agree that, that's an amazing way of seeing it, because then we're, normalizing the
Yeah.
idea that alternative sexualities are part of everyday life. However, I think being international, and this is something a lot of us might experience, I see that that is a different priority than what I think a lot of people back from my homeland, which is of course India as well, could engage in. There is a certain privilege in being able to say, hey, I want to let people into what my sexuality is, not come out to them. Because in a country like India, where it's still extremely, extremely normative to be part of this community, coming out is an essential tool to actually be able to voice yourself.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I would say there's not one time when I had to come out. There have been several times. I came out to my mom at a different time. I came out to my father at a different time. I came out to my friends, my family friends, my grandmom at a different time.
Yeah.
And I think, though, that said, coming out itself also like doesn't necessarily need to mean stating it again and again, and
Yeah.
having those nervousnesses of like how that other individual is going to accept you. Because I believe that um you don't need to seek social validation from anyone, but of course, because we're innately social creatures, like we do seek validation from some people, and a lot of the times that tends to include your family and your friends. And as soon as you get this sense of comfort in the fact that they're okay with who you are, I think you don't need to start coming out in the same way as you come out to them.
Yeah.
which is then coming out probably just turns into a, oh yeah, I have a male partner and I'm male identifying, or oh yeah, my boyfriend does this, or oh yeah, I identify as gay, so I actually don't have any interest in having a conversation about how attractive females are to you or to me because they're not. So yeah, so I think like that's where the idea of coming out itself changes when you come out to these people who you really care about.
Okay.
But like I said, the idea of coming out is very contested. It's still questioned whether there's a need to do that. But again, like I said, there's a sense of privilege when you say that there's a need to question whether we should do that. And like I said, coming out also still includes a process, and it has very different meanings and has very different connotations to how you take the idea of coming out and how important it is to you. For a lot of people, like coming out to some might not even matter. For a lot of people, coming out to some people really does. Like I said, for me at least, my priorities have always been my family and my friends and my grandmom. But for me, my priority is never someone who works with me now,
Yeah.
or someone who is my colleague, or someone who is an acquaintance, or my professors. I don't think coming out to them is necessarily as heavy as coming out to those people is.
Yeah, no, definitely. But I'm also wondering, what would you say was the most difficult part of like either coming out or letting you in?
So letting someone else in or coming out, I think that, like I said, because it has different meanings to who you
Yeah.
do it to, I would say there's two answers. The one thing is for people who you really care about, I think at the end of the day, yeah, coming out is a process of like, um, coming out is a process of stating your truth, right? Like it's like you don't want to live a lie, and living a lie also means hiding things from people. It doesn't necessarily mean like not being able to engage in those relations, or be able to date or stuff like that. But I think it also means needing to hide stuff. A lot of people still question the idea of like, why do we, like, I'm okay with the existence of alternative sexualities, but why do they need to be so up and about and in our faces? Or why do they need to have this like parade and stuff like that? The whole reason as to why we do that is because we need to constantly work against the erasure that we've faced. And working against that erasure also includes constantly trying to establish a presence. And that is exactly what your page is doing as well, right? Like it's providing a space to be present, to have visibility. And that's where I think like coming out is hard to the people you care for, because you want to live your truth, but you're extremely afraid that they may not take it in the same way that you want them to take it. And what happens there is there's a fear of losing the relation that you have. Because independent of your identity, that relationship exists. And when that relationship takes a hit only because of this factor, it becomes very difficult. So a lot of people don't tend to come out to people they really care for at times because they're afraid that they may lose that relation.
Yeah.
And I think that's the scariest part of coming out or letting someone in. However, I think there's a different set of challenges when it comes to people you don't care about enough, like in the sense that like people you don't really have to worry about. I think that's where sometimes, especially when it comes to like letting people in or coming out to people who are in a position of power as compared to you, so it could include bosses or superiors, or
Yeah.
many times it also can include your friends as family members, their parents. um, what happens is you're afraid that that may lead to, and in very broad senses, discriminatory behavior against you, that might impact just how you feel about things in general, right? Like the sense of security you have in your workplace could be one. For example, with your friends as parents, it could be the ability to engage in the same kind of relationship with your friend itself, because of how they think about these sexualities. So yeah, it does take a hit, and that probably can be concerns at times. But then also, like I said, you don't really seek social validation from these people, and so many times their disapproval or the discrimination they may met out to you because of their lack of acceptance is very secondary to your life. but it can still have a negative impact. So like I said, there are two distinct or two or more, or like I said, it's extremely contextual to every person in every relation, but coming in, letting someone in or coming out can have different repercussions and different challenges.
Yeah.
But this is what I think they pose as challenges.
Okay. And would you say like the perception of people who you knew from before and like, when you came out or were let in, like, did the perception of those people about you change? In
That's a very interesting question. A lot of people get asked that question in a way where they're like, "Oh, how did your parents change?" And like, I think again, I'm very, very privileged to say my parents are very accepting and they've always had my back. Like when I came out to my family too, they were like my extended family, they were very, very supportive. And they always had my back with everything. Not everyone has that.
Yeah.
Not everyone is privileged enough to have parents who support them like that. And I think that kind of taints my image of how I see this question of yours, because for me, nothing changed.
Yeah.
Um, but I will say every stage of life as an LGBTQIA2 plus member is different. And I have noticed a lot of change in how people see you and in how people perceive your relation with them as you grow into this identity of yours.
Yeah.
So for me, it included like dressing effeminately and embracing the fact that I don't need to walk in masculine ways, and embracing the fact that I can identify as queer in my clothing and in my way of speaking and all these multitude of ways. And that's when sometimes, yeah, of course, people's perception of who you are and their behavior towards you does change. I will say there's a lot of subtle homophobia within the Indian immigrant community at UBC as well. A lot of people are extremely uncomfortable with feminine dressing guys, or, we still get a lot of stares, we still get a lot of laughter behind our backs, and there's a lot to work on even there. But I would say, yeah, that's where I see that people's behavior does change as soon as you start embracing this unique idea of queerness.
Yeah.
And, I think another place where people's behavior sometimes changes is when it becomes too real for them. It becomes too real when you have a partner. And when they see that, oh, yeah, this guy is like, being physically like huggy and touchy with another guy. And oh, yeah, that means my son's gay. Or oh, that means my friend's gay. Like they can be gay, but I don't have to see it. And that's when, as soon as they see it, it becomes extremely real for them. And
Yeah.
sometimes behavior does change and perceptions do change then. But I would say if someone loves you, all of this is independent of the love that they can have for you. And so behaviors shouldn't change.
Yeah.
But that's also an extremely ideal and extremely utopic perspective to this. And we all hope that that's what happens, but it doesn't necessarily need to
Yeah.
happen.
No, no, 100% agree. I'm also kind of wondering, since you brought up this idea of social validation, and I'm sure, like, you're lucky enough to be that confident in yourself that you don't seek it. But I know a lot of my friends who, like, once they have made or realized certain things about themselves, their sexual identity orientation, they suffer from low self-esteem, low confidence, not being able to express themselves in the ways they like doing it in. So I'm kind of wondering, like, how did you kind of like deal with that in the first place? And like, what kind of helped you have that confidence in expressing yourself for who you are? Because I know it's very difficult for some people to do it. So what do you say to
Yeah,
them?
like I said, I think there's a sense of privilege even there.
Yeah.
I'm of a certain socioeconomic status,
Yeah.
um, and I'm at a university that is pretty like leftist, liberal. You
Yeah.
can easily, I would say you can easily shame someone for being close-minded at UBC, as
Yeah.
compared to even living in Surrey
Yeah.
or living in India, or
Yeah.
living in India within a certain socioeconomic status where you can't do this.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of privilege that I constantly try to acknowledge,
Mm.
in being able to be this confident, in being able to be this strong. But I would say a lot of it comes from social backlash that I had to face throughout my years back in India. I've had a lot of bullying and I've had a lot of discrimination done against me in very minute and very, I would say, very unfortunate ways in which I was put down for my identity quite often, even though I didn't identify as gay at that time, but just for being different. And I think that gave me a lot of power in making me realize that like I don't need to stand like for all of this discrimination that I'm facing. And the thing is, if someone's discrimination doesn't go away if you come out or if you don't come out, or if you accept yourself or if you don't accept yourself.
Yeah.
Their discrimination is intrinsic to their character and their experiences, not yours.
Mm.
And so that doesn't necessarily need to stop you from being able to live your truth, being able to be confident in who you are. And many, many times,
Mm.
that confidence actually helps you with putting them down in terms of them being able to discriminate you.
Yeah.
A lot of the times people discriminate on people only because they're easy scapegoats to do that. As
Yeah.
soon as you gain the confidence in yourself, people get afraid of that confidence and they can't met the same discriminatory behavior out to you as they were able to. And a very popular example of this, I will say, is a lot of people are extremely are extremely intimidated by very out and very queer people.
Yeah.
Examples are like drag queens, right?
Yeah.
It's very tough to be, um, it's very tough to show passive aggressiveness towards someone who's that confident in themselves.
Yeah.
So now I have a lot of confidence in myself, and a lot of people can't be passive aggressive to me because I don't give them the power to.
Yeah.
As soon as you say I'm not confident in myself, you're bending to someone else's power and
Yeah.
you're giving them the space to be able to to be discriminatory against you. And again, there's a sense of privilege there too. There's a
Yeah.
sense of privilege in being able to be confident, like I said, but also not bending for anyone, not giving them the space to be discriminatory against you. And regardless of all of this, however confident I am, I still face a lot of discrimination. I
Yeah.
still face a lot of people saying slangs to me when I go on buses or when I'm traveling or when I dress extremely effeminate. So that becomes a very unfortunate part of your life. But it's on the way in which you use your confidence to shake that off.
Yeah. No
So
doubt.
I think that's where I think confidence plays a good role.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so it's very complex, and I think one thing I will say, Ritika, is that as much as we converse about all these things, they're extremely, extremely specific to my experiences, to my life, to the context of the people I have to interact with, and to, all the misfortunes or the fortunes and the privileges that I have in my own life.
Mm.
And this is an amazing way of being able to share my story with people and people who might associate with aspects of it. But I think the general message that needs to come out of this is that you need to see what works for you. You need to see the ways in which you can empower yourself and be happy with yourself.
Yeah.
And sometimes that may mean you can't express yourselves in the way you need to, because it can be a risk. Like, I am very effeminate here, but when I go back to India, I am not. I don't wear jewelry back home. I don't wear makeup back home, even though my parents think I should.
Yeah.
Even though my parents think, why, that's it's just it's unfortunate that you have to do that, and so I think you should. But I think for my own safety, for my own larger idea of what peace is, I don't want to engage in that behavior there.
Yeah. No, definitely.
So, like I said, it's extremely contextual to everyone's life. The activism that you engage in is very specific to your identity, to your experiences, and the people you are surrounded by. And it'll be different for every person.
Yeah.
But I hope that this conversation translates into the idea of being able to love yourself more.
Yeah.
That's where true acceptance lies.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think like since we are also coming to the end, like I think I always end with like a rapid round with a lot of the people. So we have 4 questions under the rapid round, and I'll give you like a minute to answer each of those,
Right.
and then we can conclude. So I think the first question under that is like, what is your biggest insecurity?
Uh, I think there's a lot of the gay community is very, very discriminatory in its own ways. There's a lot of body typing, there's a lot of racialization. So my insecurities a lot of the times have come from like my body, because there's this idea of the perfect Ken doll body in the gay community that's supposed to be the epitome of attractiveness, and where I don't adhere to that sense of attractiveness. And so a lot of the times I think my body becomes an insecurity for me, because of the ways in which this community is, which is supposed to be extremely inclusive, is exclusive.
Yeah. What is one thing you would say you love about yourself?
I would say this unique sense of confidence. However not confident I am at times in my body, I'm very confident in the ways I behave, and in the ways I dress, and in the ways I wear my makeup, and in the ways I act. And there's a sense of power that I seek from that kind of confidence and that kind of behavior. And I think that's what I love most about myself.
What is your secret sauce to being who you are?
My secret sauce, I would say, is, like I said, loving yourself.
Yeah.
Like I said, social validation is a very tricky topic. A lot of people need it, a lot of people don't need it. But validation from your own self and for your own self is the most important. So I think that's my secret sauce.
And last one is, what is one action item you love to give yourself? Like just
Um,
like to get over like anything you feel like you are going through or experiencing at this moment. What is
yeah,
one thing you would like to tell yourself?
to tell myself, I think I say that take time to be able to do things that you love, because when you do that, there is this sense of there's this sense of care that you give yourself, and that sense of care can be extremely healing when it comes to all these discriminations and harassments and passive aggressive bullying and all these difficulties that you face in life. And I think one thing that I do, because I'm very musically inclined, is be able to listen to music.
Yeah.
So that's the action item I give myself when I want to not only heal, but also live in a space and in a bubble that I like, that I feel appreciated in, that I feel like I'm able to enjoy these tiny, tiny things of life. So yeah.
Amazing. That concludes our talk today. That was amazing, Viplav. Thank you so much for giving your time. I think we honestly, like, I learned a lot today, and I hope others can as well. I know there's a lot of discussion here, and 30 minutes is not enough to kind of conclude that. But I'm sure there'll be more opportunities to talk about this and take this topic even further. So thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.